Well, his life and career is a kind of a model of, you know, making your own way.
Before that, we had no idea whether a New Zealander could actually be considered to be a composer. It seemed like it all came from the past and overseas. So Douglas was there doing it, and that was very important.
He wrote in a way that was just totally authentic.
He sounds New Zealand, but that's because he kind of invented that sound.
He was a young chap, studied in London, came back, won prizes, so he was the composer.
Grew up on the Drysdale station, of course, and I think when he went to Waitaki Boys High, he was all-round good academically.
He was always interested in putting words together as well, so he might have been a writer in another life.
He famously submitted something called Opus 1, I think a sonata, instead of an essay that he was supposed to have written on New Zealand identity or something. There was no encouragement from his family. It wasn't until he won the Percy Grainger Prize and his father got a congratulatory letter from Federated Farmers that his father thought, okay, well, perhaps he should go on.
He would listen to what I was doing, and if he didn't like it, he would light up a cigarette. And that, he never really said anything. He wasn't very critical. He was mostly supportive, but if he didn't like what was happening, then he would make this very symbolic gesture, like, no way.
He wanted to give voice to the things that mattered to him, including what he felt about the New Zealand landscape. I mean, that figured in a very prominent way throughout his compositions.
There was a very conscious nationalism. Everybody was concerned with this issue of creating a culture which was of this place and that time.
And the titles, Aotearoa, for example, helped with that. And I talked about this for many years. In the end, I decided that it really was just Douglas's music that was defining New Zealand music.
Because a work like the Overture Aotearoa is an icon, is a musical icon, and has been played and broadcast so often. And people say, yes, New Zealand. So if you say that often enough and you hear it often enough, then you believe it.
The problem, of course, is that everybody's response to landscape, you know, whether you're Sibelius or Vaughan Williams or whoever, tends to be similar. And I think that for Douglas, the discovery really of what electroacoustic music could offer was a kind of breakthrough. Well, he said for years, I've been trying to capture the sounds of the New Zealand landscape and the New Zealand bush in my music, and now I can incorporate it directly.
This suddenly was the solution, because he could relate to the sounds of the New Zealand environment, and that he wasn't dealing with orchestral instruments, which had this long European history.
It sort of does your head in, because you get so used to listening to a sound and your brain just wants to identify it immediately. And all of a sudden you go, well, I have to completely ignore that part of my brain because I'm not going to figure out what that sound is because it's invented.
It was an extraordinarily brave move, because it wasn't necessarily in sympathy with his character. He was a technophobe. Machines really baffled and irritated and frustrated him.
He would walk around the room and puff, and finally some sounds would come out. And months later would come an amazing piece.
It was a real struggle to make these machines express something, to create sounds that had shape. So he chose a really difficult path.
He had got past all of the influences, really, that came from Sibelius or Vaughan Williams in his early music. Everybody has influences, but the electronic music seemed actually to be really unique. I know it's not widely known, but that's too bad.
His audience was baffled and alarmed that suddenly no more symphonies, no more piano sonatas.
There's a piece called Soundscape with Lake and River, which is the last one that he did. And he actually used some environmental sounds recorded on Lake Taupo and a river near Taupo, and he interwove those with electronic sounds, and that's a very magical thing. And it was really the last big piece that he did, so it's got that kind of an aspect to it, which is, well, this is my final statement in this medium.
When he retired, he stopped composing, except at home he talked about clearing out the cupboards. So he would go back and find pieces from the past that needed tidying up.
Fundamentally, he felt a bit out of sympathy with some of those avant-garde developments, and he stopped composing and concentrated, as he always had done, on trying to assist other New Zealand musicians, composers and performers.
He set up the Lilburn Trust at the Turnbull Library, and he placed all his life savings there.
I mean, he was a very, very generous musician, and I think right through his career you can see that. You know, when his 80th birthday was to be celebrated, what he wanted was a concert of other composers' music.
At his initiative, a gift was made to every school of music in the country of $5,000 a year for student composition, for a prize, for instance.
He cared about things like copyright law because, and for example, when the National Library was undergoing a major restructure, Douglas made some quite timely interventions to see that, for example, the Alexander Turnbull Library was protected. Now, of course, that is the home of the New Zealand Music Archive, and it mattered to Douglas personally, but actually his concerns went quite a lot wider. Douglas thought we need a music publishing house, and so established alongside Waireata Press Music Editions, and that became a vehicle for getting New Zealand composers' music into print.
His music is undeniably strong, individual, well-made, enduring. So all those things, I suppose, are the mark of greatness.
Well, his importance is that he wrote tremendous music, that he showed the kind of discipline that you needed to create art music in this country. And a lot of the pieces are unequaled.
Douglas would be an example of the need to make your own way.
The older you get, the more likely you are to let your previous work inspire you, rather than continually looking out there for something new. And the electronic music aspect of his career is one of those things where he's gone, right, this is just completely different, I'm going to do that.
He travelled that road more or less alone. He didn't have any significant contemporaries except in other fields, as poets and novelists and painters. So he was blazing, he was trailblazing.